Okay, so Vinny said, my dear friend Vinny said, "Hey man, my friend Fritz Springmeier is willing to come on your show with me," and I said, "Dude, stop talking smack." And I said, and I said, "Fritz, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" Here he is, an absolute legend who's before has gotten into this critical, dangerous subject matter for, let's see, I would say the earth shatter. I mean, you're have several books, but the earth shattering Bloodlines of the Illuminati is just. I just found. I have to show you this. Yeah, I look at this. Check this out. I don't know if you can see the. I don't know if you can see the address. CIA.gov has a copy that it throws out there. Of course, they stole yours. They provide the PDF, which is essentially is stealing your royalties. But hey, it's the CIA. They can do whatever they want, right? Uh, Fritz, I am so honored and excited to have you on. I'm going to open up to Vinny first because I want to start a little bit with your background because that's going to lead into just so many different topics. Vinny, thank you for making this connection for us.
Yeah, no problem. And also, Fritz, thank you. Fritz is pretty busy. Little information. Well, because me and Fritz, we haven't done a show in probably like 10 years now. So a little update. Fritz has gotten married. He's had recently a newborn son named John, and two other boys. He's got three boys, and married, doing good. Last time I talked to him, I called him the Portland Trailblazer, but now he moved to Kansas City, Missouri. So that's a little update on Fritz's personal life. And busy man, and I know we're all busy, so it's pretty exciting that he's given us a chance and got some time for us.
Fritz,
And
you've been through several states. I don't mean to step on you, bro. You've been through several states. Which do you think? Let's start the topics light. Which do you think is the least tyrannical in your personal experience that you've lived in?
Well, uh, I don't have the best answer but a good answer would be one state is Missouri, because Missouri goes easy on people that homeschool, and you definitely need to homeschool today. And they're a very easy state to homeschool in. They're good for homesteading, and with the Great Reset and the food chain problems, supply chain problems that we're having, we need to be able to grow some of our own food. So Missouri's really good for homesteading, and they have a number of other leniencies. For instance, land use laws. It's like when I lived in Oregon, I was asked by a friend to look for property out in the country, and some of the good properties you couldn't use because the land use laws locked you in so that you couldn't use them. It's really amazing what the government has done. They've stolen our rights, and when you think you have a title to your property, you really don't. So anyway, for a whole number of reasons, that would be the best state. Plus, I will add this: the military, the Navy, their Navy SEALs especially, but other people in the Navy have been told by the government that when they retire, the safest place is Missouri, the Ozarks. And then God has been showing the last 30 years, showing different people, showed me, but he showed an incredible number of other people, including Corey Ten Boom, that the Ozarks, especially the Arkansas area, would be an ark of safety for the Christian people. So in the last year, 2 years, there's literally been tens of thousands of Christians pouring in from all over the country, refugees from the libtard states, and I've spoken to a lot of them. So yeah, I would say one of the best is Missouri, but you know, I haven't done a definitive study on that so that I could say that it surpasses other states, but those reasons are pretty good right there.
Sure, sure. I just wanted your opinion. You didn't have to go into giving a lot of detailed reason. I just wanted your personal experience. I just wanted your and how you've lived in other states. You would not think, if you've never been into that area, it is criminal, Fritz. It is criminal what they have done to those beautiful Northwestern states, Colorado, Washington, of course, California. They're just prisons. They're just prisons. Beautiful states with lots of open area. And they've turned New York. I was in New York for a short period of time through the military and then into the civilian world. And of course, when you've got the gee whiz, from the Kumo criminal clan, the far left Catholic Kumo clan, through to oh my goodness, what is the annual dinner that they have? Oh, let's see here.
Al Smith dinner.
Thank you. Love you, Vinny. That's why you're my partner, brother. The Al Smith dinner. Of course, Al Smith, also far left Catholic, and because he went in, governor of New York, he went in for a bid for the president and lost. So then the revenge is to every single year to make all of the puppets running for office come and make the Pope of America, that's the Archbishop of New York, laugh by showing what a bunch of clowns they are. And I'll tell you, Fritz, if you go through a list, even, go to Google, which was born on September 27th, the birthday of the Jesuits, and just type in Al Smith dinner and go into the photo section, man, line after line after line of all the biggest names in American politics making the Archbishop of New York laugh with their tomfoolery. More back to you, brother. Can you just talk a little bit about your background and how you went through to become? Now, I know your dad was in agriculture and government, correct? And how you became just a scion of the truth community, author and researcher. Must have been an incredible journey. and please, and I know this is going to be a little difficult for you, but also how you had this brush with the law, because I think there's something going on I'll comment on.
Well, okay, let's see if we can just hit the highlights. So in 1978, I received a calling from God it was specifically to expose the corruption in the churches. But in order to expose the corruption in the churches, you have to expose the corruption in the world. And I started doing that for about 6 months, and then I stopped. And I had a period sort of like Jonah, where he was called to do something and he didn't. He ran from it. And I got beat up by the world for 10 years. In 1990 is when God brought me back to doing the calling that I had been given. And that's when I started exposing the Illuminati. And I wrote a 7-book series that detailed everything, the who, what, how, when, where of the Illuminati. And really, to start with, I wasn't being noticed at all, and nor was I trying to be. I was really trying to go under the radar so I could get my information out before I got killed. And so I just quietly disseminated my information. And really, my big public break was in 1995. Prophecy Club asked me to do a speaking tour of major cities. And if people out there want a good place to start with the information I have, go to type in Prophecy Club and Fritz Springmeier. And if they haven't taken it down, you can get a good overview of what I was teaching in 1995. And then in 2003, with a rigged court system that broke all kinds of laws, they sent me to prison. They gave me an 111-month prison sentence, which translated into 8 years in prison. And actually, it was kind of a relief for me because for years I've been working long hours. I've been helping people that were in the Illuminati escape. I had been sacrificing my life for years for everybody else. And finally, I got a little bit of time to devote to myself. So it actually probably was healthy for me because I started exercising a couple hours every day and built my body back up, and got some relief from being an enemy of the state. And
Well, God bless you. God bless you, brother, because that is about the healthiest way you could look at being sent to prison for armed robbery, which just right off the surface looks so outlandish that it just seems really obvious that you were a political prisoner. And it harkens to the story of Joseph talking to his brothers and that turned him into slavery and said that, you meant it for evil, but the Lord used it for good.
Amen. And I set a new record in the federal court system. So, they look at trials, and then they decide, okay, this means this sets this precedent, and they write them up in the law book. Well, what did my case determine? My case set a new low standard that you do not need evidence to convict someone. And that was that was what the law books took from my case, because the judge said, no, circumstantial evidence can be used to prove anything. And circumstantial evidence is, I saw Santa Claus in the mall, therefore Santa Claus exists, and that's what they used. They had no real evidence against me, and the judge knew it, and he said it can be used you don't need evidence. And that set a new low benchmark for convicting people. You don't need evidence anymore.
And that appeal went all the way up to the Ninth Circuit, which is infamous for being corrupt and far left in its decisions, and upheld, surprise, surprise, by the Ninth Circuit there in the People's Republic of Mexiponia. Wow.
Yeah, and so there was like 15 different major things that had violated my constitutional rights. And I wrote up like 12, I think I'm having to work from memory. I didn't write up all of them, but I wrote up the better ones in a writ of cert to the Supreme Court. And the prisons are so corrupt that I put my writ of cert in the legal mailbox with plenty of time for it to get to the Supreme Court. And we had someone waiting at the Supreme Court to see when it came in. They held it in that mailbox or wherever they held it and didn't mail it until after the deadline, which, of course, when you do legal work, the date that you put it in the legal mailbox technically is supposed to be the date that it was served. That's the date, but I don't know. But my writ of cert was turned down by the Supreme Court, so it never got looked at.
No surprise, Fritz. I mean, they again, I know Vinny talked to you about how my focus at All Roads Lead to Rome, especially for what I've seen. I'm an ex-Catholic, born again Christian, of course, with a last name like Cerrucci. It's just, I was born into it. I had no choice. So, the Roman Catholic Church has dominated the Supreme Court for generations now, and it just continues to get worse. I'm not in the slightest bit surprised. The whole system is thoroughly corrupt. And Fritz, I've told people, Vinny has heard me say this, there are people in our community that say, hey, I know the secret of how to win in court. I know how, whatever it is, naval law, all caps, gold fringe, et cetera, stand here, don't go cross this line, do this and do that. And the bottom line is your personal experience, Fritz. If they want you bad enough, they will break and violate their own laws and rules and do whatever the hell they want to do what they want to you.
They broke so many laws and so many rules to get me in prison. You're absolutely correct. It's a totally corrupt system. And, you know, when our government points the finger at Russia and says, oh, their trials are corrupt, well, they got four fingers pointing back at themselves, you know? And yeah,
we can roll that. We can roll that into what you wanted to talk about. I know you wanted to talk about Russia and Ukraine. And I can tell you right off the bat, I'm already excited that you're going to upset people with how Vladimir Putin is not the secret white hat that everybody thinks that he is.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You know, there's one way of looking at it, and I'm kind of repeating myself with what I've said on recent shows, but some people look at the Ukraine, they're this, you know, they're being bullied by the Russian bear and Putin. Putin's like a Hitler figure. And every country, I will grant you, every country should have the right of self-defense. So from that standpoint, go for it, Ukraine. You have the right of self-defense. But then there's another way of looking at things, and that is that, like you said, Putin's this white hat, and he's challenging the international banksters, and he's trying to, you know, these biolabs and the children and blah, 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 and he's in the right. And it really concerns me that people would make a white hat out of Putin. Putin was the head of the KGB. Go back and look at the history of the KGB people. I mean, if I told you some of the things they did, it'd make you throw up. You'd have nightmares. And this is the guy that was leading them. Not only that, but he was a friend of Kissinger. He's a friend of Klaus Schwab. He was one of Klaus Schwab's proteges, you know, in his program for global leaders. And he also belongs to an Lodge, one of the 36 Illuminati Lodges. And Kissinger is one of his Lodge brothers. So this guy is not a white hat. What he's doing, and I have gone through the script on other things, so I don't know that I'm going to necessarily go through it on this show, but the Illuminati had a script that they used, which they brought in, they did to Germany, and they brought in Hitler, and they have just dusted off this old script. And if you look at it, you know, go back and look at my recent shows, and Putin is known as Voch, which means by his people, Voch. And that means the leader. What did Der Fuhrer mean? It meant the leader. He is so much a carbon copy of the way Hitler did things. And then there's this book by Mikhail Yerevs, and it's The Third Empire, Russia as It Ought to Be. And that book is like the Mein Kampf of Hitler. It details what Putin wants to do. And if people would realize that that book is very important to the Kremlin, they love that book. They are following it as a blueprint. Putin is just like Hitler. He wants to take over all of Western Europe. He's not just going for the Donbass people. Come on. And you can see it there in black and white if you read the book. It's all there. This Third Empire, Russia as It Ought to Be.
Fritz, go ahead.
I want to call people. One of the things I wanted to say, which I haven't said on these recent shows, because people are concerned. I was listening to this one minister, and he goes, you know, you read something and they say Ukraine's winning the war, then you read something else and it says Russia's winning the war. Well, let me set you straight, people, on what's happening. Russia is not winning this war. People, I went to West Point, And of course, I resigned as a conscientious objector. I didn't want a military career, but I understand military things. And one of my pet peeves for the last 40 years or 50 years in terms of military history is that people think that taking a few towns or some territory is going to win the war. Look at Germany in World War II. They took over all of the Ukraine real fast in a few months, and they took over most of the important part of the Soviet Union, almost all of European Russia, real quick. Did they win the war? No. Conquering territory is not the same as winning war. So Russia's been taking a few towns. Diddly squat. Did you notice, people, what our president did, or our pretend president Biden? Biden did a Lend-Lease Act. So all these things that he's been doing, okay, now we're going to do this package deal, you know, so many billions to Ukraine. That's something on top of the Lend-Lease. What did we do in World War II with Russia? We gave them $11 billion of Lend-Lease material, thousands of tanks, thousands of airplanes, all kinds of boots, all kinds of food, metals for their factories, everything they needed, oil and gas, and you name it, we supplied them. That's what we're going to do with the Ukraine. The countries that are backing Ukraine have about 30 times Russia's economic might. Now tell me, war is economic. Russia is, so they take a few towns. As long as Ukraine stays in the fight, Russia is going to lose in the long run, because you have to think logistics. You have to think economics. It's a done deal, just like with Hitler. Hitler had the best army. He had the best airplanes. You know, he had jet fighters. You know, yes, but it didn't matter. Logistically, he was going to lose. And you can war game that thing. I've even war gamed it out. Just, it's interesting to war game it out. Every step of the way, Hitler beat the odds, but eventually the odds were going to catch up with them. And they did. You can only fight the entire world so long before the whole entire world logistically, economically outdoes you. So don't think that Putin's going. So this war is not helping Russia. That's the bottom line. It's not helping Russia. So who's it helping? It's helping Klaus Schwab and these other Illuminati goons that want this great reset. And I'm going to shock people a little bit here. You know, there's an old vernacular. It's eat, S-H-I-T, and die. That's what Klaus Schwab and these other Illuminati goons are telling us. They're telling us eat, S-H-I-T, and die. And National Geographic, there's several people that are important in National Geographic that have gone to the World Economic Forum in Davos, including official representatives for National Geographic, because as a corporation, it's part of World Economic Forum. And I have a magazine that National Geographic put out saying, what is your future going to be like? And in that book, they say, you are going to eat human feces. Yeah, they said that's what the future is people are going to eat human feces. And I thought, well, that's really dramatic, because that goes back to this thing I just said, eat, poop, and die. But is it real? Yes, there is a Japanese company that has developed the technology to turn human feces into edible protein. So they've actually got the technology to do that. That's where we're headed. Besides eating bugs, they're setting up some, they're actually setting up some factories to start making bug protein for us and get us away from the beef. They're shutting down the world's food system. They're going to chip everything and build back better the food system like they want. Except it's not going to be like what I want. It's going to be the eat, poop, and die version of Build Back Better.
Well, Fritz, I wanted to bring up something real quick.
Yeah,
'Cause it
I don't want to
reminded
do all the talking.
So 10 years ago when me and you were talking, I remember you brought up to me Atlas Shrugged, and you told me about, you know, Ayn Rand and the elite and how this was like their playbook or plans for the future. And I never forgot that. And I read the books. I even watched the movies that they made Hollywood. And I always thought about you. And then two years ago when COVID happened, day one, I right away started thinking about you again and Atlas Shrugged. And I was like, they're gonna start shutting down their own companies. They're gonna destroy the food stuff. So I wanted to throw that out there to you. Do you
Thank you.
think this is Atlas Shrugged or any relationships with the Atlas Shrugged?
COVID is part of the Great Reset where they're shutting things down. They're stressing the world's economies in every which way they can. And of course, the COVID didn't do the job, so they have this war. And they hinted at all this stuff with me. I interacted with the kingpins of the Illuminati, and they were hinting. They told me that there were going to be pandemics. Actually, they used the word plural, pandemic. They told me that there was going to be a world war. I mean, these were things I already knew. So it wasn't like, oh, this is something new. I already knew that they had this on their agenda. And people that have sat in on Illuminati meetings have come back and told me, you know, Fritz, what we see happening is what they were told was going to happen in these Illuminati meetings. So we are following this apocalyptic Armageddon script that they have wanted to take us through. There's no doubt in my mind. And so that's what this horrible war in the Ukraine's all about. You know, the food supply in many countries has been devastated. Sri Lanka's the part of Sri Lanka's problem is they tried to be PC and green and sustainable and destroyed their own economy. Yeah, these libtard ideas are radical, and if you really want to know what they're all about, it's destruction. It's bringing in a socialist world dictatorship. That's what it's all about. And you're right. COVID was definitely a big part of that. And from day one with COVID, I was suspicious, but I also knew that if I was really vocal, they would shut my voice down. And so I was tried to be real circumspect what I said, so I didn't. But eventually, you know, here recently on May 1st, what a nice date. On May 1st, they hijacked my Facebook, it was my outlet to the world. To about every other day, I was writing a really powerful article exposing the Illuminati, and I lost that. And Facebook has not allowed me any way to get back on. And
yeah, the censorship is out of control, Fritz. The censorship is out of control. Same here. They stole on the Ides of March, March 15th. They stole mine. They deleted it without cause. I had like 2,500 connections just gone overnight. They even allowed someone to hack my wife. And I see that as an attack on me through her, hacked her account and then started charging money through, because there was a way for them to do that. We don't have it directly into our bank account, but there was other ways for them to exploit that and steal money. Fortunately, we got the money back, but she's not received her account back. I'm not getting mine. You're not getting yours. They knew this in Event 201 when they war gamed this, Fritz. They knew that they had to keep an absolute chokehold on information to pull this off, and that's what they did. I go even as far as saying that the rebellions that were being given, such as the trucker revolt in Canada and the farmer revolt in Europe, they're all part of it. They're all manipulated, because what did the trucker revolt and the farmer, what are they doing? They're clogging the logistics even further. They're making it worse. What we need is fear and pressure on the people causing this, not more trouble to us and our motorways and our logistics. That just made no sense. It's clear that it's all manipulated in the same way that, if you want to go out and protest what I would call the Jesuit machine, you put on the face mask of a Jesuit assassin, Guy Fawkes. So they control both sides, Fritz. They always have. I wanted to mention, you've pointed out, of course, Boris Yeltsin was one of theirs, and they changed hands. It was totally scripted. You have 1999, you have Putin being lieutenant colonel and then running the KGB. And right about that time, I don't know if you remember, we had the Moscow apartment bombings they're very clearly false flags, very clearly done on the inside, blamed on the Muslim Chechens. And that wasn't just some innocent people. That was a whole host. There were several bombs that also killed Russian service members, as well as innocent people in the Moscow apartment buildings. And I'll tell you, I have no compassion. Go ahead. We lost your audio. Oh, you're muted. You're see if you can unmute. You have to unmute. You're muted, Fritz. There we go. Check test.
Are you okay? I'm back with you.
Yeah. So Moscow apartment bombings, and I have no compassion. I have no idealism towards anyone that stands on the blood of innocents in order to get into power. As far as I'm concerned, Fritz, that's everybody. There are no white hats. No one is going to. No one. Not Donald Trump. Not Vladimir Putin, not any other individual in the spotlight. They're there because they're compromised. They're there because they're part of the system. They're not there because they're good people. There are no white hats.
Yeah. So an analogy would be, Russia got control of Cuba. That was right in our back door. Okay. So Putin is saying, NATO's moving into the Ukraine. They're right there on his doorstep, but it would not have justified United States launching a full-scale invasion of Cuba just because Russia it was on our back door and causing trouble in Latin America. Likewise, Putin is not justified in all of the distress that he's caused the world and the suffering that he's causing, not only Ukraine, but he's causing Poland and his own nation. I mean, the mothers in Russia, I really feel for them because, I've followed a number of stories, and like this one mother, this sergeant's calling her every day after the February 24th. Your son's fine. Finally, somebody in his unit contacts her through social media and says, your son was blown up and is dead. And then when the sergeant called her the next day and said, your son is fine, she goes, why are you telling me this? My son's dead. And he goes, oh, I'm just a sergeant. So these poor mothers. And then she spent the next 2 months trying to find out somebody who had authority, what's happened to my son? The distress that this poor mother is feeling. So it's not just Ukraine, it's Russians that are suffering. There is so much suffering going on. There's no justification for all this craziness.
Fritz, I saw one estimate that Vladimir Putin may be worth $200 billion, and that puts him well ahead of the vaccinator William Henry Gates #3, right? That's his full name, right? Bill Gates. And so as far as I'm concerned, there was that scene in the Daniel Craig Bond movie about everybody sitting at a dark table. Putin is just one of those guys. He sits at the table and he just does what he's told. He's no hero. He does what he's told.
and his cronies, his 36 cronies that are mafia bosses too. And I've talked to Americans that have tried to do business in Russia, and you know, it's an economy run by criminals. And if you want to
Just
do
ask Hunter
anything-
Biden.
Pardon me?
Just ask Hunter Biden. I didn't mean to step on you. You know, and the CIA, that's something else. The CIA uses Ukraine as its playground and has for decades. So this is all manipulated. They give their perks to, you know, the Bidens and whoever else that, you know, Pelosi and Biden and all of these extremely corrupt individuals. So no surprise there.
Yes, it's corrupt on both sides. There's as many neo-Nazis in Russia as in the Ukraine. If Putin's wanting to get rid of neo-Nazis, he needs to get rid of some of his friends and some of the political parties in Russia and a lot of other people. If Putin's trying to get rid of crime, he needs to start in his own backyard. And, you know, all of the things he accuses Ukraine of, he could clean up his own backyard first. Yeah, it's just a mess, and people need to know that this is a controlled conflict that is just being done. The only people that are winning are the World Economic Forum and their sponsors, the Illuminati.
First, I just yelled at my wife today when I came back, not yelled at her, but vented to her that I couldn't believe that gas was still like almost $4.50 a gallon here in Pennsylvania. They have milked this. They have needlessly gouged and bled the common person, which is their way to make these satanic levels of wealth. There's no reason to have just catapulted the price of oil. And of course, as you well know, the technology is thoroughly out there, but is completely suppressed to get away from the desperate need of oil and internal combustion and all of that stuff. There's just no reason. We are long overdue for Christ table flipping in the temple time. We're long overdue.
Yeah, these people it's not global warming that's destroying the planet. It's these Illuminati types.
Amen.
And so going back to Vinny's discussion there, and it's easier for me to read it straight off of one of my articles I wrote recently. So the Illuminati run the elite run simulation games of what they plan to do. And so there was three. There was the food chain reaction game, which was done in November 9th through 10th, 2015. There was Event 201, which was done October 2019. And then there was the Reset the Table, which was done May and June 2020. So look those things up, people, and you'll see that they simulated, you know, the COVID. They've simulated taking down the food chain, supply chain. They have played these simulations as to what they were going to do. They know what they were going to do. In fact, they talked about these things to me, but they wouldn't give me the details. They would just, give me the broad brush strokes of what they were going to do. You know, yeah, we're going to have pandemics, but then, you know, they're not going to tell me the specifics. They're not going to tell me, oh, we're going to create this COVID thing, and then all of our ministers who are compromised because they're being blackmailed are going to go along with shutting the doors of their churches.
Yeah, I have nothing to do with any organized religion, Fritz. It's all thoroughly corrupt and controlled. It is just enslavement. I've been preaching against organized religion, for no pun intended, for quite some time. Christianity is at its purest and its best in its most decentralized form. The believer, the Bible, Jesus Christ, that's it.
Yeah, and Christ even went that way. He said, call no man your father, but let the Holy Spirit teach you. That's one of the things that the Catholic Church took over very quickly. They wanted you to call their priest father instead of letting the
Absolutely.
Holy Spirit teach you. They want you to believe that the Pope speaks for Christ. He's the vicar of Christ.
As a
And
matter of fact, that vicarious filii Dei in the Latin, the numerals in Latin has a numerological value to 666. And of course, vicarious filii Dei is in itself blasphemous because it says that the Pope is the vicar of Christ on earth, which he is not.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Fritz, there's so much to cover. I wanted to first allow you and of course Vinny to hit the topics that were important to you before I got into some of the stuff that you wrote. I also don't want to keep you over time. How much time do we have for you?
You have as much time as you want. I told my wife it would be 1 hour or 2 hours, so
Okay.
I can't go 2 hours without stressing.
We won't go over 2 hours.
But yeah, I can certainly do a little bit more than an hour. There's so much. This great reset. Basically, I hate to tell people this, but all these other topics are minuscule compared to the Great Reset, because really, when you start looking at what the Great Reset is, it's the end of the human race. And it's coming right down the pipe. And they want controlled cyborgs that are basically slaves, that maybe like there's a book, a novel, Brave New World, where they create people and they've taken reproduction away from people. You can have all the sex you want, but reproduction is done in factories, and that's actually where they're headed. And people as we know it are on the way out. The Georgia Guidestones, I've been quoting the Georgia Guidestones for a while, and then of course they got destroyed. Nobody knows who did it. It's possible that the Illuminati just decided to do it.
It sure looks like that to us, Fritz. It sure looks like they were just erasing the evidence and causing one more distraction. That, by the way, is the very first thing that came to my mind in relation to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It was their exit strategy for the scamdemic, because the amount of criminal corruption, the tyranny, the mass murder, the mass poisoning, the mass robbery, they needed an exit strategy for the scamdemic, and it was Russia-Ukraine as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, and they have war gamed these things. They have planned them for decades. They have had the best minds going over. And I know when I worked against Illuminati mind control, the trauma-based total mind control, which you know a lot about the Jesuits. The Jesuits and the Catholic Church are really big into this trauma-based mind control, creating total mind controlled slaves. Anyway, over the years, they have asked themselves, what can someone do against what we have done? And they build backup systems. And so they are way beyond the common person. We think, oh, they're doing this. Well, we can react this way. Well, they already have something if we react that way. And they try to double bind you. And so there are a lot of double binds. That's what happened on January 6th. All these people protested the election being stolen, and then look what happened. It's an example of the double bind that they run.
There's a great line in the 2015 movie, which is still a propaganda movie, Spotlight, with Michael Keaton and Liev Schreiber, about the pedophile priest scandal in Boston. And as far as I'm concerned, it's an outstanding movie. But the propaganda is that you can trust the Boston Globe to do. Eventually, they'll do their job. Law enforcement, judges, eventually they'll do their job. But to me, that's the propaganda lie. They will never. They was allowed. Gagin was a scapegoat. He was a pedophile, but they selected him to be tossed to the wolves. They killed him in prison, and then they vacated his conviction. The victims, the families were just enraged, Fritz, just enraged. But the movie is an outstanding movie, and there's a line in there. Stanley Tucci, I think, is the actor that plays the lawyer, Mitch Garabedian, and he's talking to Mike Resendez, one of the reporters there, and he says, "The church thinks in centuries, Mr. Resendez." My hair on my arms is just standing up just saying those words. The church thinks in centuries, Mr. Resendez. Fritz, they absolutely do. They have war gamed this. There is a fantastic book I recommend to everyone, Rulers of Evil by Frederick Tupper Saucy, in regards to how the Jesuit superior general is the one who actually wrote Sun Tzu's Art of War, and he was bragging about what a master manipulator he was, particularly in the American Revolution. But they know, just like you said, you are absolutely right, Fritz. They have war gamed every possible move, counter move. And that's what worries me in relation to fighting back. They have already projected the things that can happen against them. And they have done this again and again, where they encourage people to stand up and rise up, and then they pull the rug out from under them. You mentioned Cuba. The very first thing that came to my mind is, of course, the Bay of Pigs. The Bay of Pigs was not a debacle. The Bay of Pigs was not a cluster, was not an accident. Is that your girl? Hey, you're muted, bud. Hey, wonderful to see you. That is awesome. No, don't apologize. That is awesome. I'm so glad your daughter is with you. I know you love her very, very dearly. The Bay of Pigs was scripted. I don't want to see your daughter more too, by the way. The Bay of Pigs was scripted for good Cuban patriots to be slaughtered. They had that air cover of a flight of 6 A-26 bombers. They purposefully, McGeorge Bundy purposefully held them back so that those Cuban patriots would be slaughtered on the beaches. That was by design. They had done that repeatedly. They did it to the Hungarian patriots in 56. They did it to the Czech patriots in 68. They did it to the Polish patriots in 1944. It is there. That's what scares me, Fritz, is they have designed, because of what you said, move, counter move, and they set up good people and good patriots to be slaughtered.
Yeah, and poor Kennedy, JFK was actually trying to do what was right, and he was being given bad advice, and he was not responsible for the debacle at the Bay of Pigs. That there was somebody else. And when I was looking at with a fine-tooth comb over what had happened there, I realized, they could have taken out the Cuban Air Force and protected those guys when they landed. They intentionally allowed the Cuban Air Force to be unscathed and come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really dirty pool, and poor JFK. They were just running circles around him, and he was trying to do the best he could to. Just a second, Joshua, you gotta leave because Daddy's on the radio. Okay.
That's how kids are absolutely welcome. Just as long as kids are absolutely welcome. I think it was Woodward of Woodward and Bernstein fame that quoted John Kennedy for saying that his goal was to smash the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the wind. And that was his death knell. That was his absolute death knell. And he kind of did it to himself to some degree by being a bit of a reprobate. I'm convinced that, let's see, this was 63 when he was murdered. The year before, there was Jackie had a private audience with John the 23rd. And Fritz, I am convinced that she went in and said, "Holy Father, my husband is humiliating me with these constant affairs. Can you do something?" And I just have this picture of him sitting there like Jabba the Hutt. "I'll take care of it, my daughter. You'll never have to worry about the." And within less than a year later, she's crawling out onto the presidential limousine trying to scoop up her husband's brains. She made a literal deal with the devil as far as I'm concerned. And it's an absolute no-brainer that none of that occurred from Lee Oswald from 200 meters behind and above on whatever the third story of the book depository. It was clear that there was a series of kill teams, and the one that got the final shot was a front and to the right, knocking Kennedy's head back and to the left. Ridiculously obvious. It's a coup. It's a broad daylight coup.
Yeah, the Illuminati kingpins laughed and bragged to me that they had done it, and they're above the law and they know they can get away with it. And yeah, their assassination teams did it. Everybody was against JFK because JFK thought that he was president and he could do what he wanted. And that's not the way it works, you know?
That's exactly how I put it. I don't mean to step on your Fritz, but that's exactly how I put it. He thought he was president. I will say the same thing about George Patton. George Patton thought he was in charge. George Patton thought he was running things, and it was actually the OSS, the Knight of Malta, William Donovan OSS, that murdered him at the conclusion of World War II. And I highly recommend Robert Wilcox's book, Target Patton, as a definitive proof of that. Anyone that thinks they are their own person in these positions that have been installed for them, they're sorely mistaken, Fritz.
Yeah, true. Very good.
So keep going. I wanted to say you mentioned that in Bloodlines Illuminati, you had a great point that the 12 bloodlines at that time. You've also said that they fluctuate. I absolutely agree that they fluctuate in and out of power, but they were a mockery of a divine group of 12 as a number of government. They were satanic mockery, 12 tribes, 12 disciples. And so in a dark satanic way, we have these 12 names. For me, I've seen a lot of these Italian families doubling up, not just on power, but on roles in the Catholic Church, the Borgias, the Medici, the Aldo Brandini, Orsini, Colonna, and they're also doubling up. I mean, I think the Borgias had at least two. One of them, that monster, Rodrigo de Borgia, Alexander VI, an absolute monster that abused his own daughter, Lucrezia. Everybody blames Lucrezia as being the monster, the poisoner. It was his own family, Cesare, her brother, and Rodrigo, Alexander VI. These families, the Farneses, of course, it was Paul III, Alessandro Farnese, that installed the Loyola and the Jesuits in 1540. So I see this as, go ahead.
Can I jump in here?
Please do.
So yeah, your Guelphs, the black nobility, these Venetian powerful families, these Italian families that you're mentioning, if you go back in history, you see that they had incredible power and they extend their power through history. So they are connected with the current Illuminati. The Medici, they tie right in with the current Illuminati. How their bloodlines all weave in and out. This is too complicated. It's like looking at a tree that's got, a million different branches interconnecting. And I haven't ever taken it apart. I don't know that anyone can.
Rich, I think part of this is their own rationale. I think they have to believe these lies, these bloodline lies. You are destined. You have the divine right of kings. You can trace your lineage to so-and-so and so-and-so. Therefore, you need to be in power. You need to be in control. It's part of the lie to them as much to us.
Definitely. It's exactly. It's one of the lies that they tell themselves. So anyway, I don't have any problem with someone like yourself saying these are powerful families. Yes, they're still powerful families. Where I have a problem with is because I worked with people, quite a few people that came out of the Illuminati, and the families that I gave in the Bloodlines of the Illuminati book, which I happen to have, for once, for an interview, have the cover of right here, the book. those are the ones that the Illuminati members themselves told me were who they had selected as the top 10. And it's very possible that within those top 13 bloodlines, that if you trace them back, they have blood from these Italian bloodlines that you're saying. The 13th bloodline is the Merovingians, and the Merovingians have intermarried with a lot of bloodlines. What they're trying to do is they are trying to accumulate blood-wise the most power that they can. So, it was like an analogy is go back to the ancient world, and the Pharaoh is going to send his daughter to the king of Babylon, and likewise the king of Babylon is going to send his daughter to the Pharaoh of Egypt. They're interbreeding. They're trying to draw these different streams of occult power into powerful bloodlines. So yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that these Italian bloodlines have intermarried with what we have as the current bloodline. So
I'll give you an example, Fritz, of this tie-in. Not to step on you, but I see this. I'll give you an example of this tie-in. For instance, you mentioned in Bloodlines of the Order of the Knights of the Helmet, run by Francis Bacon. Well, what I have seen is that Francis Bacon was a front man, and behind Francis Bacon was a very powerful Jesuit by the name of Toby Matthew, who was knighted by Protestant King James I of England / James VI of Scotland for attempting to set up a Catholic wedding for his son, Charles I, who precipitated the English Civil War with his corruption and treachery. So you're right, brother. It is absolutely intermingled and intertwined, and it's really hard to unwind that.
Thank you. Yes, that well said.
I also want to say something about Fritz's Bloodline book, and where I told Fritz a while ago that I personally met someone in Connecticut, and her father and everything was in Fritz's book, and I confronted her, and she was open. She admitted it, and then I met someone else, the Watson bloodline. To me, Fritz, they both these women had blonde hair, blue eyes, but they were from the Bloodlines book, and your book was definitely accurate. I mean, even in the back of the book, you had the Bohemian Grove membership list, and the one woman, Sue, she was from the Gray family, and her father was like an international banker, and her uncle, all their names were in the book. And I literally, like, the woman couldn't believe it. She was like, where'd this book come from? So I know your book is accurate. I've seen it firsthand and even met people in it.
And Fritz, you give evidence yourself. You mentioned the Cabot family that have roots all the way back to Venice and Giovanni Caboto of Genoa. So yeah, I mean, that's all there. It's all there.
Yeah, I got to meet Henry Cabot Lodge. And personally, when I was a boy, I was traveling through Hong Kong, and my parents said, "There's Henry Cabot Lodge," and I said, "Okay, I'll go over, shake his hand, and get his signature."
That's going in. By the way, that is I'm citing that through you once again. I have cited you many times before. I would say also something that was fascinating to me in your prophecy club lectures. You mentioned how many of these Christian churches and these cathedrals, these powerful cathedrals, of course, so many of them are connected to the Catholic Church, have been erected on ley lines for the purpose of satanic human sacrifice. And I've been saying that with you. Of course, you beat me to it by several decades, but I've been echoing you through this and letting people know that all of these beautiful stained glass cathedrals are built on the bodies of the dead. And what they tell us is, well, these are the dead of well-known saints, so they're interned there. But the concept is the same, and you go deeper. That's actually not just these saints. This is done for satanic sacrifice.
Did you I don't think this is in any of my books. It's probably in some of my talks. But I mentioned that at the end of World War II, they sent a committee to inventory all of the great churches that had been destroyed in World War II. And when they went through and looked at the damage of these churches, these cathedrals that had been destroyed, they discovered that most of them had pagan altars underneath the Christian altars. They were actually pagan ritual sites. So these Catholic churches were not just haphazardly placed; they were placed on important spiritual pagan sites. You have to. When I was working with these people, I was bringing out of the Illuminati. They explained the layering in of spirits. So it's just like here in North America, the Native Americans, some of them were very bloodthirsty and pagan, and they had ritual sites. And so those ritual sites would have meaning. And then you build another occult layer there, an occult layer. So you have spirits and you have demons. It's actually demonology, but you could call it spirit. There's all these spirits being built, layered. So yeah, so the Catholic Church is very skilled in understanding, secretly understanding these occult spiritual dimensions, and then they take advantage of it.
Let me back you up. If I can step on you again, I'm so sorry, but let me back you up. Let me back you up again with an example of why it is the Jesuits run observatories. Why are the Jesuits looking into space? Why are the Jesuits involved in archaeology? Well, one of the observatories that they run is supposedly owned by the University of Arizona, and it was stolen from the Apache, and it's set on an Apache burial ground on Mount Graham, and they have a special lens in their telescope that has the acronym of Lucifer, the Lucifer telescope, run by the Jesuits, planted on a stolen Apache burial ground. So you're right. You're absolutely right, brother. You're absolutely right. Yeah, where do you go from there, right? Where do you go from there?
Okay. So I know where I want to go. I'm going to switch directions a little bit. So our listeners have probably heard about the mass flooding in Kentucky. Clear back in 1993, there was information put out that it was the ELF waves, woodpecker, the U.S. and the Soviet Union were working together to do weather war against the world. And clear back in the 70s, they started doing weather war. And so they learned how to create drought and how to create flooding. And so these anomalies, these strange weather patterns, I have no doubt that they're being created. And it's all part of this Armageddon apocalyptic script that they're doing. And if you look at Hollywood, they're coming out with all of these apocalyptic movies, and a lot of them have to do with very severe weather.
It's predictive. Go ahead, Vinny.
I was going to say another thing I noticed about these movies, other than the apocalyptic, they also keep adding in, even like the children movies, it's all about the AI taking over. That's what I keep seeing everywhere too. Apocalyptic and the robots taking over for humanity.
As far away as early as 1952, Fritz, there was an incident in Lynmouth, England, where the government was caught cloud seeding and causing flooding that killed some 38 innocent people. And as usual, no one was reprimanded. No one was brought up on charges. No one was brought to justice. We're just supposed to shrug our shoulders that the British government and British military murdered almost 40 people with their tomfoolery in regards to the weather. And the follow-on to all this, it's all connected. they're going to continue to use these weather weapons in the same way they're using these endless mass shooting false flags. First, they take the guns away, and then they tell us we are responsible for global warming and that we have to be chained to carbon credit limitations, and then might as well go ahead and add it to the digital ID that will say whether or not we're vaccinated. That'll also tell us how many carbon credits we have left, and then we're done. We can't buy any more for that month because our carbon credits are all used. And it's all a lie. It's all designed to put us into slavery.
Yes, exactly. So, wow, you touch on several things that I wanted to speak about, and then my brain got overwhelmed and I can't think of any of the things that I was going to mention.
Weather weapons, slavery, mass shootings, gun control.
Mass shooting. Okay, yeah, thank you. So are you familiar with Operation Crimson Mist? Let me tell you about Operation Crimson Mist. It's very important. In Rwanda, where you had the Hutu and the Tutsis, you had two tribes. Well, our CIA went in and pulled strings to exacerbate the centuries-old animosities between these two tribes. They were doing everything to build up the anger. Well, they discovered several decades before that, by accident, I think, they discovered the exact brain frequency that will take rage and elevate it up to homicidal rage. So if you're angry at somebody and you have the exact frequency beamed to your brain, you will become homicidal and kill. And so the CIA had 3 C-130s over there in Rwanda, and they flew over the crowds and they beamed this exact frequency into them. It was Operation Crimson Red, and 1 million people were genocided because of this. And it's an inside secret that this all happened and that they have this technology. Well, now they can send this over your cell phone. They have the technology to send this brainwave frequency over your cell phone. So what I see happening, guys, is they haven't been able to take our guns away from us. So their next step in order to, to double bind us is the last 5 years, they've been creating animosity and hatred, and they've been breaking up the United States in polarizing us to where the libtards and the conservatives literally hate each other. And at some point, they're going to probably, with the conservatives, because they have more guns than the libtards, they're going to beam this frequency into them, and you are going to see mass killings. You are going to see Americans killing Americans, and they can't take our guns away from us, so they're going to use our guns against us for us to slaughter each other.
Fritz, that is brilliantly put. That is devastatingly brilliantly put. And I have to say, it seems very frighteningly on target. They have been manipulating. Look at from George Floyd to Antifa, Black Lives Matter. That I will tell you, here in Pennsylvania, way up in the northeast, we are inundated with illegal aliens, and they are encouraged to stick out, not assimilate, to be obnoxious, to make ghettos, just as African and Middle Eastern Muslims are encouraged in Europe to stick out, not assimilate, so that people can get angry at these groups. And instead of focusing on who is really the problem, they focus on these groups of this divisiveness that is just constantly beamed out. It's frightening, Fritz. I think you're absolutely right. It's very frightening.
Yeah, just along that line, someone was telling me that the Biden administration is giving Social Security cards to the illegals coming over the border. And then in this company that I worked at, well, I'll tell who they were, because I don't work for them anymore, nor will I work for them again. It was Tyson. I worked for 4 years. I had a very hard job cutting. I boned out part of the rib, and I worked very hard to support my family. And then on November 1st, 400 of us at my plant were fired because we didn't take the jab. And so, God works all things to good, and he's already started working that, me getting fired from Tyson for not taking the jab for good. But one of the things that Tyson did along the lines of what you're saying is, if you were Muslim and you worked at Tyson, you got 2 breaks where you could go and pray to Allah. And they technically it was supposed to be a 15-minute break, but they would turn it into a 30-minute break. That means that you would get an hour off every shift. And those of us, so like on my job, there were 4 of us. We all had to work together to pull rate. Well, if we had a Muslim, that meant he was gone for a whole hour. So if we did a 9-hour shift, which we normally did, we worked 9 hours, he worked 8 hours, and we had to pick up his load. And that wasn't easy. And so they bent over backwards to be unfair to the Muslims. And that they didn't give us Christians any, and they refused people like me. I wanted a religious exemption for taking the COVID jab, and they would not give a religious exemption. So
you know what, Fritz, it goes all the way back to what we were talking about earlier, and the courts. These bastards have their own rules. They ignored that. Those are federal exemptions. That's the Hyde Amendment. Those are federal exemptions that you should have been granted, and it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter. That is just unprecedented. I don't know how many, if you've told anybody else that you lost your job as a result of refusing to take the clot shot. But that's extremely heroic, and honestly, you're being a true Christian is trusting in Christ to do that. I used that earlier, an example in a Bible study we did earlier today, as an example of what it means to have courage and what it means to live your faith, as it says in Matthew chapter 10, where Christ says, "If you put anything above me, then you're not worthy of me." And that includes something like that. Who is it that takes the mark of the beast? It's people that go along to get along. It's people that aren't listening to the voice of the Holy Spirit. And I'm sure the Holy Spirit is telling people, you really shouldn't take this vaccine. It's not good for you. It's going to be problems. They're going to track you. They're going to weaponize this. They're going to use this to target you. What a surprise. What a brilliant connection. I have that bookmarked, and I am going to look into Operation Crimson Mist. They used back in 1994, they were using microwaves, weaponized microwaves. And here we are 30 years later, and everything is 5G, and we're being warned about the weaponization of 5G. I wonder, I shudder to think of how worse it has become, the technology that they've made, Fritz.
Oh, yeah.
Frightening.
Yeah. They have us right. We're like a bug underneath their thumb. They're ready to squash us. And so people don't worry about upsetting them. I've been saying this for 30 years. They have us at the edge of a cliff. They're going to push us off that cliff. And you're worried that they're going to get upset if you fight back. Hey, don't worry. You're about to be pushed off the cliff, people. So you better do something. Don't sit on your royal hind and, but get out there and realize that the fate of the human race is at stake, because these people that are running things, the global elite, they are really psychopaths. They're crazy. Believe me, I've worked with pulling their people out of the Illuminati, and they're crazy. They're crazy. And they don't think like you and I. And they think nothing of killing thousands of us any more than you would think of if you walked on the sidewalk and stepped on an ant. It doesn't worry them.
They want it. They want it, Fritz. That's what their goal is. Just as you told us or remarked earlier, that they want a remnant of us eating bugs and poop, and most of us they just as soon have dead. They just as soon kill us en masse, which I'm convinced that this scamdemic is a very big part of that plan. Vinny, I want to shut up for a minute. Do you have anything else that you wanted to cover?
No, I'm loving it. I mean, I thought that was great, Fritz, what you just said. I mean, I'm enjoying it. And yeah, don't worry about me. You guys keep going if you got it.
Sure. I'm just going through my notes real quick. I also had made a note of Fritz, and I think this was part of your Prophecy Club series as well, that you had noted how this ideology is ancient, pagan, and Luciferian, and you made the connection to the Catholic Church and the Dagon worship, and the bishop's mitre is a remnant of the fish head and the Dagon worship. It is ancient. We have this architecture in St. Peter's Square of the satanic sex magic, the phallus of Osiris across from the womb of Isis, the mirror image of Washington, D.C., which used to be called Little Rome on the Potomac, this massive phallus of the Washington Monument across the dome of the rotunda there in the Capitol. It is ancient and it is satanic. And this is what controls. There's no voting them out, is there, Fritz? There's no voting them out.
No, and you are so correct. If people really studied things out, Alexander Hislop, maybe you've read his book, The Two Babylons. I read that book back in 1978, and that's such a good book. It's an old book. I don't remember what the copyright is on it, but he really does a good job of breaking down how pagan the Catholic Church is. And the things that the Catholic Church has done, I am sure that 99.99% of the listeners don't have a clue as to how corrupt the Catholic Church is. I was in the attic of somebody and I found an old book, and I thought I knew how corrupt the Catholic Church was. And I read this book and I was like, whoa, it went even beyond what I had imagined. And it says in the scriptures, if there's anything noble, if there's anything of good report, in Philippians, think on these things. So I also want to encourage people to see the positives in life. I don't want to just hammer the negatives. I just don't want to hammer so hard on people that they give up. That's not what I'm trying to do. You see, I'm still in the fight. I'm trying to raise the next generation of warriors. I have 3 wonderful sons, and Lord willing, they will continue after me. And that's my prayer anyway. And we need to hang in there and see the positive and realize that, evil contains the seed of its own destruction. It's like Adolf Hitler. He looked invincible, but he wasn't, and these people are not invincible and don't think that they are. I don't know how God's exactly going to unseat them, but we read in the book of Revelation that he is going to. And obviously we're in the end times where we see the things of Revelations happening. They're trying to bring in, with the Great Reset, this electronic digitized money, and that matches what the book of Revelations in a couple parts talks about, the mark of the beast, where you can't buy or sell, and amazing.
Fritz, let me tell you, I think that high note is a good place to let you go. I've kept you in an hour and a half. We'll split the difference between what you told your wife and what we wanted you for. I really appreciate. I'm so thankful to Vinny and to you especially for coming on, because it helps to let people know that you are still in the fight, that all the way down to the point of personal sacrifice in losing your job over taking a courageous stand is a wonderful example. And right now, that's where we're at. We're at the point of taking a personal stand and still speaking and preaching the truth. We don't know how the Lord is going to open doors, but in the meantime, I encourage people to follow your example.
Well, thank you. And I might mention, besides losing my job recently, my car was sabotaged, and it was great. The drivetrain fell apart, the rack and pinion. It all fell apart when we were in Springfield, Missouri, in a residential. We were going 20 miles per hour, slowing down to a stop sign. If it's obvious that it was sabotage. If that had happened out in the open road, we might have been killed. Somebody else might have gotten hurt. So God brought good out of what the enemy meant for evil. God brought good out of, and these things continue. But there is a force for good in the world, and I just want to remind people of that. Thank you very much. This has been a real privilege to be on your show.
Oh, the privilege has been mine. All mine, my friend. Vinny, I'll let you close for us.
Yeah, Fritz, I love that. Like what you were saying, we talked about that maybe a year ago on a phone call, where what's one of the biggest things that the Illuminati and these people want is depopulation. So the fact that you have three sons now, like you said, and I have my daughter,
homeschooled.
We don't know how long this is going to be, and we need the future, and we got to stay positive, like you said. I think it was a great show. I'm so thankful that you came on. For people, you could write Fritz at Springmeier messages at Hotmail. You could go to pentracks.com too. And
Springmeier@hotmail.com.
What was that? Springmeier message?
Springmeier messages at hotmail.com.
Yeah, and I'm sure Johnny will put it in the video, and I'm going to try to upload this video also, and I'll put the description, your information. Thank you so much, Fritz. I know we're all going to be busy, but if you ever have time and you want to come back and have fun, me and Johnny would love to anytime.
Absolutely. So pen tracks, Fritz? Is that the website?
Pentracks.com is my website, but it's in the process of being rebuilt. And so they can't order my books there right now because it's not been properly rebuilt. There's just the outline of it, unfortunately. And I've been really busy, and I haven't I'm receiving some help in rebuilding it. And so people are going to have patience because it's not functioning right now.
Okay. Stay strong, stay safe, stay in the Lord, because clearly you have angels watching out for you, as you should. I'm so grateful for that. Thank you for this time, Fritz. Be blessed and continue to be an example for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Same to you. Thank you.